Monkey.
What's up, Cowboys Nation? Welcome back to another video. This is your pregame prediction video for Week 15. The Dallas Cowboys are 10-3. They're traveling to Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars, who are currently 5-8. This is a big game. Let's talk about it.
Down the field, Lamb, 10-5, victory! Touchdown, Ezekiel Elliott. How about the rookie Micah Parsons? What a play!
Defense wins championships, but the Super Bowl is won by the quarterback.
Before we jump into the video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more Cowboys content. We're going to be here all season long. The Cowboys have a big game coming up here, and we're definitely going to dive into it. This is probably going to be, I'm just predicting right now, I think that probably might be one of my longer videos, or if not, just a lot of information, because I really am intrigued by this matchup. And everyone talks about trap games, right? Everyone talks about what trap games might mean. To me personally, it's obviously you're playing a team that's better than what their record indicates. The Jaguars are 5-8, but when you look at the statistics, when you look at their schedule, when you look at their games, they're just a couple of possessions from either being, at 500 or being a little bit better. This is a young team here coached by a good coach. I'm a fan of Doug Peterson. And to me, this is a trap game. This falls under the definition of a trap game. Most important thing that you can look at this game right here is if the Cowboys win Sunday, they will clinch a playoff spot. And this would be the first time that they clinch, they go to the playoffs in back-to-back seasons since 2006 and 2007. You guys need to be following me on TikTok because I made a video about that, diving into those teams in 2006 and 2007, but that's crazy. It's been a long time coming. And before we jump into the game, we got to tip our hats to Mike McCarthy and this coaching staff to go to the playoffs in back-to-back seasons. Regardless of what happens in this game, the Cowboys are still going to be going to the playoffs. But you got to tip your hats to this the coaching staff, the players, and Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones. They have put together a team that has gone to the playoffs in back-to-back seasons. And so that's going to be fun to see, whether it happens this game or not. The last time the Cowboys and the Jaguars played was in the preseason, but it was actually October 14th, 2018. The Dallas Cowboys destroyed the Jacksonville Jaguars. That was the year after they went to the AFC Championship and lost to the Patriots. The Cowboys won 40-7, and that was a big-time game. The Cowboys, that was a prove-it game. Of course, that season ended up being 8-8, but regardless, a really good season. Really good game for the Cowboys. The Cowboys are 7-1 at home. This is actually in Jacksonville, which they are 3-2 on the road. If you've been watching my videos, if you see my pregame prediction videos, I've talked about this team on the road. We know they can play at home, and if I would have it my way, if I would have my wish list and my Christmas wish list here right in front of me, I would love if the Dallas Cowboys had a home game for the playoffs because they look really good at home. On the road, they have struggled a little bit. The two losses have come in Green Bay at Lambeau Field and at Lincoln Financial Field against the Philadelphia Eagles. We're going to Jacksonville, so a little bit different. The Cowboys are on a four-game winning streak right now, which ties their season high. Earlier on, they were on a 4-game winning streak when Cooper Rush was the quarterback. So if they win, this is going to be the highest winning streak of the season, going in at 5 games, going into the Christmas Eve game against the Philadelphia Eagles. So a lot at stake right here. A lot of things are happening if they win and if they lose. But this is a good matchup here. Like I said, I think the Jaguars, in my opinion, I think they are a better team than led to believe. A lot of people are going to look at this record on Sunday and they're going to say, oh, it's the 5-8 Jacksonville Jaguars. They're probably not going to go to the playoffs. But you look at their quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, former number 1 overall draft pick, has thrown 20 touchdowns this season, 6 interceptions, finally has found himself a coach and found himself in a system in his second year in the NFL, and they're striving. Travis Etienne, over 800 yards. Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, good weapons for this team. And they've done a really good job at protecting Trevor Lawrence here by not allowing a sack last game, but they're one of the better teams in pass protection. If you look at their stats here, they're 11th in the NFL in their offense. Now, their defense struggles a little bit. They're at the 27th, and you look at those games, and we'll go through their schedule here in a little bit. But that defense is definitely one of the main reasons why they're 5-8. But they're passing. They're actually 10th in the league in passing, and they're 15th in the league in rushing. You look at the opposite side for the Cowboys are 20th in passing, and they're 7th in rushing. So very similar. They're actually a better passing, and they're more of a passing team than the Cowboys are a running team. You can obviously see that in the stats right there. And that's what makes this matchup so much more interesting, in my opinion. And if we played this game a little bit earlier, I feel a lot better about the Cowboys getting maybe 4 or 5 sacks on Trevor Lawrence and getting a decisive win. But the Cowboys are going to Jacksonville at a very rough time in terms of where they are with the injuries. Look, the Cowboys have lost some very key players. I'm not talking about star players. If CD or Dak goes down, those are star players. But the Cowboys have lost key starters. This isn't the NBA. This is the NFL. It's a team sport. There's 11 players on defense. There's 11 players on offense. And all of them need to do their job consistently and well enough to get a win on Sundays. And so the Cowboys have lost Anthony Brown, and trust me, I know how Cowboys Nation feels about Anthony Brown. And the Cowboys have lost a very solid player in Jordan Lewis earlier in the season. The Cowboys lost Terrence Steele at right tackle. The Cowboys lost Jonathan Hankins, their recent trade acquisition early in the season, and he was looking pretty good in a weakness that the Cowboys had, which was the rush defense. And so those type of losses, yeah, we still got big players. Obviously, we got Jaron Kearse, we got Trayvon Diggs, we got Micah Parsons. I get that. But when you're losing key starters that are solid in that position that those stars rely on so that they can do their job and be who they are, it affects the team. And I feel like the Jaguars are facing off against the Cowboys, where the Cowboys are in an unfortunate situation. And I really feel like those things are catching up to them, especially with the game that happened against the Texans. The Cowboys need to bounce back here. So let's jump into this here where, like I said, this game makes me feel uneasy. I got concerns about this game. I got concerns about how the Cowboys will match up against the Jaguars. And a couple of weeks ago after Thanksgiving, when I talked about the 3 matchups coming up here against the AFC South, the Colts, the Texans, and the Jaguars, I mentioned that the Jaguars, we'll revisit that and we'll talk about that because that's the one that concerns me. I'll reference that video right now. And that's what you got to look at here in the next the 3 games that are coming up here at the AFC South. Let's talk about the Jaguars game when it comes, because I think the Jaguars are more than their record says, and I think they got a lot of talent, and I think they're well coached with Doug Peterson. So yeah, this is a team that on paper matches up really well against the Cowboys. The Jaguars have a strength that just so happens to be one of the weaknesses for the Cowboys right now. The Jaguars love to pass the ball, and they're really good at it, and they got a good young quarterback doing it. And the Cowboys right now, they only have Trayvon Diggs, and they're depending on Kelvin Joseph and Deron Bland. Now, granted, Deron Bland had a great game a couple weeks ago against Matt Ryan, had 2 picks. Kelvin Joseph, we're still waiting for him to step up. Again, he had somewhat of an okay debut last week, but the Cowboys are putting a lot of I guess a lot of work on those guys, and I think this is the perfect game to gain confidence here for those 2 players, to get that confidence going, because there's going to be some better quarterbacks, trust me. So for the matchup for me, when we're looking at the Jaguars and their offense, to me, that's one of the main important things here. The matchup between Doug Peterson and Dan Quinn and their offense and the defense. That's something that's going to be a battle come Sunday. And I think it's going to be give and take, honestly. I think it's going to be 50-50. The other reason why I think the Jaguars are a really good matchup for the Cowboys is Doug Peterson is he strategizes so well, schematically. This man makes the most of the pieces that he has in front of him. Just look at the Super Bowl ring he got for Philadelphia. And he has some weapons here for the Jaguars. And I think he's going to have a few plays up his sleeve. And he's going to keep the Jaguars in this game offensively. And he's going to put Trevor Lawrence in some situations that's going to have him be successful come Sunday. Now, I expect Trevor Lawrence to have a good game. I expect that pocket to look the same against the Cowboys. I think we're going to get a couple of sacks, to be honest. I think because, last week the Jaguars didn't allow any sacks, but I think the Cowboys get to Trevor Lawrence a couple of times this coming week. But I do believe Trevor Lawrence, and look, I'm unbiased. I'm a realistic Cowboys fan. You guys know that. That's what this channel is about. So I'm going to tell you like it is. Trevor Lawrence and the offense will take advantage of the secondary that we have right now. As much as I want to believe that Deron Bland and Kelvin Joseph are going to step up, I believe they're going to take advantage of that. And Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence are sitting down right now planning for Sunday. And they're probably never going to throw. If they're smart enough, they're never going to throw it on Diggs' side of the field. But they're going to attack the tight ends. They have some very good they have some very good screen schemes. If you look at last week's game, getting the tight end open, getting the running back open, expect that. They're going to get the ball out of Trevor Lawrence's hands really fast, and they're going to throw at Kelvin Joseph and DaRon Bland. And that's why we need them to step up and play better games. But in my opinion, I think Trevor Lawrence and those guys are going to take advantage of that. I would not be surprised if they scored over 20 points. I would not be surprised if they scored over 25 points and if Trevor Lawrence had a big game on Sunday. You look at Trevor Lawrence since week 9. Over 1,300 passing yards, 10 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, over a 70% completion percentage. That's number 1 in the NFL. And a 111.7 passer rating, which is second in the NFL. He's catching fire right now. And the pairing between Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence has paid its dividends, and it's showing right now. Even though they're 5-8 and they're probably not going to make the playoffs, that's okay because this is a young team that's getting it going and figuring it out here in this first season with them together. With that being said, let's talk about my defensive predictions here. I don't think we're going to be as high up as 4 sacks, 5 sacks as normally as I predicted. I think we are going to get pressure on Trevor Lawrence. I'm going to say 2 sacks. And I do believe we get 1 interception, believe it or not, as much as I've talked about how this secondary will struggle. I do think Lawrence is picked off once by the Cowboys. But like I said, I do believe the secondary will have a long day against this offense. Now let's talk about Dak Prescott on the offense because, like I said, big matchup between the defense and their offense. But this game, to me, really comes down to Dak Prescott. Because I feel like the offense and defense, the Cowboys defense and the Jaguars offense, is really going to cancel each other out. I think they're both going to be neutral. Like I said, I think it's going to be give and take between them on Sunday. But Dak Prescott, if this game needs to be won, he needs to be better than Trevor Lawrence. And what I mean by that is not necessarily throwing more yards or throwing more touchdowns. It really comes down to being a quarterback. And as a quarterback, it's protecting your team. Dak Prescott has thrown 9 interceptions in 8 games. And once again, you can argue down below the reason for that, whether it's miscommunication, not catching the ball. I get that. Regardless, 9 interceptions in 8 games is still 9 turnovers in 8 games. And 9 turnovers at the end of the day is still 9 opportunities given to the other team to score. And so regardless, Dak Prescott, I think he's going to have a big game. I'll get that out of the way. I think he's really going to step up to the plate and be better than Trevor Lawrence. But he really needs to limit those turnovers. Now, it's just not all on him when it comes to the offense. Trust me, Kellen Moore has to call a better game. There's just no ifs or ands about it. He needs to call a better game. That Texans game was probably one of the worst games he's called. And it just seemed like he was calling the wrong play at the wrong time. And the Texans responded appropriately. You got to tip your hat to the Texans on how they played Sunday. But Kellen Moore has to get back to what is successful and what's effective most importantly. And Kellen Moore and Dak Prescott, they're the two that you got to look at with this offense. Kellen Moore has to call better plays. It's not just calling runs. It's not just calling pass. It's just not that. It's what run you call. It's what pass you call. Shotgun passes and the curl routes and letting those option routes go up. That's not enough. You got to get the ball out of Dak's hands. You can't have him sitting back there waiting for a play to develop and having the Jaguars get on Dak Prescott and sacking him. You got to get the ball out of Dak's hands. You got to get him rolling out of the pocket. You got to get some play action in there. You got to use dual tight ends. You got to get Ferguson and Schultz involved. There's a lot of things, those things that I mentioned, that Kellen Moore has to get going to be successful, to get this team back in the zone and just completely erase what that performance was against the Texans last week. And on the other side, Dak Prescott needs to be smart with the ball. He's going through his progressions pretty well. I looked at that last game against the Texans. I thought he went I thought he went well with his progressions. I thought he was going through them and finding the right man. But here, you just got to limit the turnovers. Even I get being aggressive, but you just got to throw the ball away sometimes. You just got to throw the ball in the ground sometimes. You can't force a pass unless you're sure about it. And I do understand the aggressiveness. But this game, is really about Dak Prescott. He needs to play better than Trevor Lawrence, and he needs to put points on the board. He needs to be that leader. He needs to get this team in the red zone and get touchdowns in the red zone and not settle for field goals. So my prediction for the offense here comes down to two things. I believe this game's going to be a shootout. That's going to be in my prediction here a little bit when I predict the game, but this game's going to be a shootout. I think it's a Dak Prescott versus Trevor Lawrence battle. I think Dak Prescott is going to go 31 of 38. I know I'm always predicting under 30 attempts, but I think this is going to be a big game where Dak's going to be throwing the ball more. I think he's going to throw over 300 yards as well. And I think he's going to throw 3 touchdowns. Now on the other side of that, Tony Pollard. I think he's going to get over 100 total yards on the day. He's going to have another big game, and he's going to get 2 touchdowns on Sunday. Those are my offensive predictions. Now, the Cowboys are not who they were early in the season. This is what I mentioned. They've lost a lot of key players. Not star players, but key players that make a difference on Sunday with the game. So I think that's what we're going to see here. And with the Jaguars being such a pass-heavy team and the Cowboys lacking in their secondary, it's going to be a matchup that's going to allow the Jaguars to score points, but also give the opportunity for the Cowboys offense to counter with their pass-heavy offense. And that's when I really believe it's going to come down to Dak Prescott and his arm. So my prediction for Week 15 between the Dallas Cowboys and the Jacksonville Jaguars, it really is going to be close. I do really believe the Jaguars are a perfect matchup for the Cowboys because what their strengths are right now align with the Cowboys' weaknesses. I do believe they win in a shootout on Sunday. The Cowboys will win, and I think it's going to come down to the final minutes. The Jaguars are going to be up, and it's really going to come down to Dak Prescott to lead the team back down the field again for a game-scoring touchdown, for a game-winning touchdown. I think the Cowboys win a close one, a shootout, 31-29, to advance to 10-3 and go to the playoffs for the first time since 2006 and the 2007 season. And the Cowboys would have clinched their playoff berth, and they would have punched their ticket. Now, here we go. Either the Cowboys improve from their abysmal game last week, even though they won, or the Cowboys continue to struggle. And that's probably what you don't want going into a big game against the Eagles. But I'll say this because it's been on my chest for the past few times, and I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me and watching this video as we prepare for this Week 15 matchup. The NFL is wide open. I'm looking at all these NFL teams and all their quarterbacks. The NFL is wide open more than I've seen for the Cowboys in the past few seasons. And you can make the argument that the only team that's standing in the way for the Cowboys right now is the Eagles. You can maybe throw the 49ers in there as well. They're a really good team, but after Jimmy G dropped out, even though they dominated the Bucs, still a lot of question marks there to see how that's going to pan out with 4 more weeks to go in the season. But the Cowboys have probably one of their best opportunities here as a football team, as an organization, as a franchise, to make a true run at the championship. And so it's going to be really interesting, and I'm looking at these games here. We got 4 left, and the schedule definitely looks a lot more tougher than what we originally perceived. Because you got the Jaguars, who I believe are underrated. You got the Eagles, who have the best record in the NFL. You have the Titans, who are a pretty good team, even though they lost to the Jaguars last week, but they can run the ball against the Cowboys, who have struggled with their rush defense. And then you got the honorable Washington Commanders, who have found their ways back into playoff conversation. If the season ended last week, they would be in the playoffs, so I'm going to say that's a playoff game. 4 games left to go, and none of these are going to be easy. None of them are as simple. I mean, even if they were, you can't even say the Cowboys are going to win it because last week that was that situation, and it took us until the final 2 minutes to win that game. Cowboys have a tough schedule, a tough road ahead of them. They got 4 games left. 3 of them are on the road. And the only home game that they have is against the NFL's best team. Oh, and they're 3-2 on the road. And their final 3 games are on the road. So a lot of questions for this Cowboys team, and we're going to get a lot of answers here. They're still going to go to the playoffs, but a lot of it's going to depend on how well they do these last 4 games. how much momentum they have going into it. So if you want the team to get hot, it's going to start Sunday. If you want them to get on a streak, even though they're on a 4-game winning streak, but if we want to get serious here and start talking Super Bowl, not those, not the analysts or the shows that talk about Super Bowl way in October or September. That's dumb. But the Cowboys, if they want to be contenders, this is where you got to get hot. This is where you got to start winning games. Right here. Starts on Sunday and goes on for the next 4 weeks. I'm excited to see whether this team is the real deal, because I'm not completely sold in just for the fact that we're losing some key players at a key part of the season. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know your prediction for this game. Let me know your thoughts about what the Cowboys at this moment of the season. Comment down below. Like this video. Subscribe for more Cowboys content. And I'll see you guys tomorrow for the Madden prediction video. And then I'll see you Sunday for my post-game reaction video. Go Cowboys.
Down the field, Lamb, 10-5, victory! Touchdown, Ezekiel Elliott. How about the rookie Micah Parsons? What a play!
Defense wins championships, but the Super Bowl is won by the quarterback.